Good morning. You look good. Beautiful, handsome group. I want to thank you for those kind words of introduction. I want to thank the Nashville Public Library for inviting me to be here, to honor me with the literary award. Now, I didn't grow up in a big city like Nashville, or Atlanta, or Birmingham, or Montgomery. I didn't grow up in a big city like Memphis, or Detroit, or Philadelphia, or Chicago, or New York. I grew up in rural Alabama, 50 miles from Montgomery, outside of a little place called Troy. My father was a sharecropper, a tenant farmer. My great-grandfather had been a slave. But in 1944, when I was only 4 years old, my grandfather, my father, my mother, my uncles and aunts encouraged my father to buy some land. My father had saved $300, and a man sold him 110 acres of land. My family still owns this land today. On this farm, we raise a lot of cotton and corn, peanuts, hogs, cows, and chickens. Now, in the state of Georgia, like the state of Alabama, we raise a lot of peanuts. I don't eat too many peanuts today. I ate so many peanuts when I was growing up. I just don't want to see any more peanuts. Sometime I get on a flight flying from Atlanta to Washington, or Washington back to Atlanta, and the flight attendant tried to offer me some peanuts. I said, no, thank you. I don't care for any peanuts. We raise a lot of hogs and cows and chickens. I know some of you young students, you like to eat chicken, right? But you don't know anything about raising chicken. Well, on the farm, it was my responsibility to care for the chickens, and I fell in love with raising chickens. Do any of you know anything about raising chicken? Oh, I see a few hands. Well, but, oh, wonderful, wonderful. Well, why don't we compare notes here? Why don't we teach the other people something about raising chickens? Well, as a little boy, I fell in love with raising chickens. But as a little child, I wanted to be a minister also. I wanted to preach the gospel. So from time to time, when the setting hen was set, I would gather the fresh eggs together, mark them with a pencil, place them under the setting hen, and wait for 3 long weeks for the little chicks to hatch. Some of you may be saying, now, John Lewis, why do you mark those fresh eggs with a pencil before you place them under the setting hen? Well, from time to time, another hen will get on that same nest, and there will be some more eggs. And you have to be able to tell the fresh eggs from the eggs that were already under the setting hen. Do you follow me? Oh, you don't follow me. It's okay. It's all right. You don't follow me. Don't fool me. So when these little chicks will hatch, I would fool the setting hen. I would cheat on the setting hens. And when I look back, it was not the right thing to do. It was not the moral thing to do. It was not the most loving thing to do. It was not the most nonviolent thing to do. It was not the most democratic thing to do. But I kept on cheating and on the setting hen and fooling these setting hens. I was never quite able to save $18.98 to order the most inexpensive incubator or hatcher from the Sizzler Buck store. Now, I know most of the young people are students. You don't remember, you don't know anything about the Sizzler Buck catalog. That big book, that heavy book, that thick book. Some people call it the wish book. I wish I had this, I wish I had that. So I just kept on cheating on these setting hens. I would take the little chicks, put them on a box with a lantern, raise them on their own, or give them to another hen. But as a little child, I wanted to be a minister. I wanted to preach the gospel. So along with the help of my brothers and sisters and cousins, we would gather all of our chickens together in the chicken yard, like you gather here in this magnificent hall. And we would have church. My brothers and sisters would line the outside but around the chicken yard, and we would gather all of our chickens together. And I would preach. I would talk to these chickens. And some of these chickens would bow their heads. Some of these chickens would shake their heads. They never quite said amen, but they tended to listen to me much better than some of my colleagues listen to me today in the Congress. And some of these chickens were just a little more productive. At least they produce eggs. Well, that's enough for that story. Growing up there, when we would visit the little town of Troy, visit Montgomery, visit Tuskegee, I saw those signs that said white men, colored men, white women, colored women, white waiting, colored waiting. To go downtown on a Saturday afternoon to the theater, all of us little black children had to go upstairs to the balcony. And all of the little white children went downstairs to the first floor. I would come home and ask my mother, my father, my grandparents, my great-grandparents why. They would say, that's the way it is. Don't get in the way. Don't get in trouble. But in school, I had wonderful teachers. And one teacher told me over and over again, read, my child, read. And I tried to read everything. We had very few books in our home, but I read the books. We were too poor to have a subscription to the local newspaper, but my grandfather had one. And when he would finish reading his newspaper each day, he would pass it on to us. I didn't like segregation. I didn't like racial discrimination. I didn't like riding the broken down buses to school, passing the well-built white school, seeing the white students on the new buses. So I became restless. But in 1955, 15 years old, in the 10th grade, I heard of Rosa Parks. I heard of Martin Luther King Jr., heard him speaking on our radio. The action of Rosa Parks, the words and leadership of Dr. King inspired me to find a way to get in the way. And I got in the way. I got in trouble, what I call good trouble, necessary trouble. So in 1957, 17 years old, when I finished high school, I applied to go to a little college 10 miles from my home, Troy State College, now known as Troy University. Submitted my high school transcript, my application. I never heard a word from the college. So I wrote a letter to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I didn't tell my mother, my father, any of my sisters or brothers, any of my teachers. I told Dr. King I needed his help. I wanted to attend Troy State. Dr. King wrote me back and sent me a round-trip Greyhound bus ticket and invited me to come to Montgomery to meet with him. In the meantime, I've been accepted at a school here in Nashville, Tennessee, American Baptist College. I was accepted. One of my teachers, a young man by the name of Kelly Miller Smith, informed Dr. King that I was here. I told Reverend Dr. Kelly Miller Smith that I'd been in contact with Dr. King. They knew each other. He informed Dr. King that I was here. So Martin Luther King Jr. got back in touch and suggested when I was home for spring break to come and see him. In March of 1958, by this time I'm 18 years old, I boarded a bus, and I traveled from Troy to Montgomery. And a young lawyer by the name of Fred Gray, who was a lawyer for Rosa Parks, for Dr. King, and became our lawyer during the Freedom Rides and during the march from Selma to Montgomery, met me at the Greyhound bus station and drove me to the First Baptist Church in downtown Montgomery, pastored by the Reverend Ralph Abernathy, and ushered me in to the pastor's study. I was so scared, I didn't know what to say or what to do. And I saw Martin Luther King Jr. and Reverend Ralph Abernathy standing there. And Dr. King said, "Are you John Lewis? Are you the boy from Troy?" And I said, "Dr. King, I am John Robert Lewis." And he continued to call me the boy from Troy. And I would never forget. And I came to American Baptist before I got ready to leave to come in 1957, September 1957. An uncle of mine gave me a $100 bill, more money than I ever had. Gave me a Foot Locker, one of these big trunks that you pull open, have drawers that you can put things in, had the drapers that you can hang shirts, coats, jackets, suits. I put everything that I own in that Foot Locker, except those chickens, and took a Greyhound bus to Nashville. And I'm glad I made the decision to come to this city. It's here, in this city, in this wonderful city, the Athens of the South, where I really grew up. So I come here to say thank you. Thank you. Thank those that are going on for being my teachers, my classmates, my friends, my sisters, and my brothers. This community is where I started studying the way of peace, the way of love, studying the philosophy and the discipline of nonviolence. So I said thank you to Nashville Public Library for inviting me to return to Nashville. It was here that students from Fisk University, Tennessee State, Meharry Medical College, students from Vanderbilt, Peabody, Scarrett, we came here. We studied the way of peace. We studied the way of love. We studied the philosophy and the discipline of nonviolence. We studied Thoreau and civil disobedience. We studied the life and teaching of Gandhi. Long before we started sitting in, we had role playing, we had social drama at a little Methodist church. And it was here that we started sitting in early part of February 1960, but we had tested in November and December 1959. Had a wonderful leader, a wonderful teacher in Jim Lawson. So I owe it all to this city and to the academic community, to the religious community here in this great city. I feel more than lucky. I feel honored and blessed to be standing here seeing each and every one of you. Martin Luther King Jr. would be very, very proud of this audience. You look like the making of the beloved community. Sometimes we would be sitting in, and someone would come up and spit on us, put a lighted cigarette out in our hair, pour hot water, hot coffee, hot chocolate on us. pull us off the lunch counter stools. And we were told over and over again, if we continue to sit in, we would be arrested. We would be taken to jail. No one would like to be arrested. No one want to go to jail. It's not a pleasant place. But one day, mid-February, we heard if we continue to sit in, we would be arrested. We would be taken to jail. And I remember as a young 19-year-old, almost 20, I had what I call an executive session with myself. That's when you talk to yourself, but you don't talk back to yourself. That if I were going to get arrested and go to jail, I wanted to look sharp. I wanted to look clean. I wanted to look fresh. So I went downtown Nashville, and I bought a suit. I went to a used men's store, and I bought a suit. A vest came with it. I paid $5 for this suit. If you come to my office in Washington, or maybe go through the file of the Nashville Tennessean, because the picture was on the front page of the Nashville Tennessean. We have a blow-up of the picture in my office in D.C. Group of us arrested. And I had on this suit, and I did look good. And if I had this suit today, I probably could sell it on eBay for a lot of money. The first time I got arrested here in this city, I felt free. I felt liberated. I felt like I had crossed over, and I have not looked back since. I said to each and every one of you, and especially the students, the young people, when you see something that is not right, not fair, not just, you have a moral obligation, a mission and a mandate to stand up, to speak up and speak out and get in the way, get in trouble, good trouble, necessary trouble. We need the energy, the commitment, the dedication, the hard and necessary work of our youth to lead us to a better place. We need you now more than ever before. It was the young people during the 60s that led the way. We need you to lead us again. You can do it. You must do it. You must help us create the beloved community and redeem the soul of America. If we get it right here in our country, maybe we can serve as a model for the rest of the world. Now, in 1961, black people and white people could be seated together on a Greyhound bus, leaving Washington, D.C., to travel through Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi. We were on our way to New Orleans to test a decision of the United States Supreme Court. I saw those signs at waiting rooms saying white waiting, colored waiting. White men, white women, colored women. We had to change that. And 13 of us were selected as the original Freedom Riders. I made a decision in May of 1961 to be one of the original 13. I remember the group meeting in Washington, D.C. We went through a period of training and orientation. So on May 1st, 1961, the night of May 3rd, 1961, we went to a Chinese restaurant in downtown Washington, D.C., a short distance from the nation's capital. Now, growing up in rural Alabama, going to school here in Nashville, I never been to a Chinese restaurant, never had Chinese food. And someone spoke up that evening and said we should eat well because this may be like the Last Supper. On May 4th, 1961, we boarded some a Greyhound bus and other a Trailway bus. We left to travel through the South. My seatmate was a young white gentleman. Traveled through Virginia without any real problems. Through North Carolina, we arrived in a little town in South Carolina, Rock Hill. We tried to enter a so-called white waiting room. And a group from the Klan attacked us, beat us, and left us lying in a pool of blood. This is May 1961. Many years later, in the Congress, 2009, a white gentleman in his 70s came to my office with his son in his 40s and said, "Mr. Lewis, I've been a member of the Klan. I am one of the people that attacked you and your seatmate. Will you accept my apology? Will you forgive me?" His son started crying. He started crying. I said, "I accept your apology. I forgive you." They hugged me. I hugged them back. And the three of us cried together. It is the power of the way of love, the way of peace. It's the power of the philosophy and the discipline of nonviolence. As a nation, the movement is teaching us that as a nation and as a people, we must lay down the burden of separation, the burden of division. We must move to create the beloved community. We must do what we can to come together as one people, as one family, because we all live in the same house, not just the American house, but the world house. Martin Luther King Jr. put it another way. We must learn to live together as brothers and sisters. If not, we will perish as fools. The late A. Philip Randolph, the dean of black leadership during the 60s, who had the whole idea about the March on Washington, used to say to many of us, he would say, brothers and sisters, maybe our foremothers and our forefathers, all came to this great land in different ships, but we're all in the same boat now. That we must look out for each other and care for each other. That's where we are today. We can build a beloved community. We can tear down the walls. We can build bridges. And we must do it. Not just for ourselves, but for generation yet unborn. I happen to believe, because of the movement, that we have a right to know what is in the food we eat, what is in the water we drink, what is in the air we breathe, that we have to save this little piece of real estate that we call Earth for generation yet unborn. That is our role. We have a mission and a mandate to do just that. This planet, this little piece of real estate is not ours to hoard and to waste. But leave it a little cleaner, a little greener, and a little more peaceful for generation yet unborn. That is our calling. That is our mission. Now, I got arrested here in Nashville, yes. Got arrested in Alabama and Georgia, a few other places. And since I've been in Congress, I've been arrested 5 times. And I'm probably going to get arrested again for something. My last arrest was trying to get the Speaker of the House to bring forth a comprehensive immigration reform bill. If he had brought the bill forth, we would have passed it, and President Barack Obama would have signed it into law. It doesn't make sense. In our country, we have hundreds, thousands, and millions of people living in fear. We need to set people on a path to citizenship. When Pope Francis came and spoke to a joint session of the Congress, he said, "We all are immigrants. We all come from some other place. We can do it. We must do it." I want to tell you that somehow and some way, if someone had told me when I was preaching to those chickens and trying to baptize some of them and save them, that one day, after being arrested and jailed and beaten and left bloody, after marching across that bridge, left unconscious, thought I saw death, that I would live to see the changes that have occurred in America. And when people tell me that nothing has changed, I feel like saying, "Come and walk in my shoes. Come and walk in my shoes." The signs that I saw, those signs are gone, and they will not return. The only place that we will see those signs today will be in a book, in a museum, on a video. Don't tell me that things have not changed. We still have a distance to travel. I just heard when I was sitting back there a moment ago that a colleague of mine, grandson, 15 years old, was murdered in the city of Chicago. Gun violence. We have to stop the violence, young people. Some of you probably read or saw it on television that we had a sit-in on the floor of the House of Representatives. Never, never, ever. Never, ever before in the history of our country that a group of members of Congress will occupy the well of the House. And they came to me and said, "John, what should we do?" Let's engage in nonviolent direct action. Let's have a sit-in. And we did. By sitting down, by sitting in, we were standing up. No one is trying to take away the Second Amendment, right? No one is trying to take away your gun. I grew up in a house where my father had a rifle over the door for hunting, had a shotgun in the corner, and we were told never to look at it, never to touch it. I have never fired a gun in my life, and I never owned one. I don't need one. We don't have bears running around the city of Atlanta and wild animals. So why do we need, can we teach people the way of peace, the way of love? Teach people the way and the philosophy and the discipline of love, nonviolence? Just love everybody. Love is a better way. So I said to you, and especially to the young, stay in school, get the best possible education, and learn everything that you can learn. And be kind. Never hate, but hate is too heavy a burden to bear. Never get lost in the sea of despair. Keep the faith. Keep your eyes on the prize. Keep working and never, ever give up. Yes, never give up. When I was growing up in rural Alabama, 50 miles from Montgomery, I had an aunt by the name of Seneva. And my Aunt Seneva lived in what we call a shotgun house. We tell the story in my first book, Walking with the Wind. And some of you probably read the story. It's a true story. I was only about 4.5, almost 5 years old, but I remember it so well. About 12 or 15 of my sisters and brothers and first cousins were visiting this aunt. And an unbelievable storm came up. The wind started blowing, the thunder started rolling, the lightning started flashing. My aunt became terrified. She got all of us together and told us to hold hands. And we did as we were told. The wind continued to blow, the thunder continued to roll, the lightning continued to flash, and the rain continued to beat on the tin roof of this old house. And when one corner of the old house appeared to be lifting from its foundation, my aunt would have us to walk to that corner. And when the other corner appeared to be lifting, she would have us to walk to that side. We were little children walking with the wind, but we never, ever left the house. I said to you today, here in Nashville, the wind may blow, the thunder may roll, the lightning may flash, and the rain may beat on our old little trimming house. Call it the American house. Call it the world house. But we must never leave our little house. Hold our house together. Walk with the wind. Walk with the spirit of love. Walk with faith and hope. Hang in there. Hang in there. Be anchored. Lay down the tools of violence. We can do it. Thank you very much. Okay.
At this time, I would like to introduce each of them, and I'm hoping time will allow that each will be able to ask at least one of your questions, and hopefully for round two. Sydney Everett. Sydney. Jordan Malone. Tasia Vinson. Asian Taylor. Kayla Pritchett. And Braden DeVault Smith. And they are joined here today by their teacher and advisor, Mr. Michael Agee. Again, a brief round of applause. So at this point, without further ado, let us begin. I'm going to ask one of you, when I call your name, please just give us your first question to the Congressman and have a conversation. So Sydney, would you like to begin?
Good morning. And thank you for allowing us to ask you these questions. My first question is, what was the most frustrating aspect that stalled the civil rights movement in your opinion?
The modern day civil rights movement, in my estimation, really started or got a lift with the lynching of Emmett Till. This young African-American boy who left the city of Chicago, came to Mississippi during the summer of 1955, and on August 28, 1955, was lynched. Rosa Parks said on one occasion, when people asked her to get up and move to the back of the bus, she said, I thought about Emmett Till, and I could not move. I remember Emmett Till. I remember meeting his mother. And if you have an opportunity to go to Washington, the castle that Emmett Till was in is in the new museum in Washington, D.C. I've been there, and I've seen it. I was only 15 years old. I can never forget that. That was the beginning of the modern day civil rights movement, in my estimation. There may be scholars and others who are different with me.
Thank you. Jordan, do you have a question for the Congressman?
Yes. First of all, thank you for at least coming here and honor us. And it's just been a privilege for you to come to this school and just, talk to us and everything that allows us to ask these questions. My question is, what was everyday life like attending an HBCU during those segregated times in the middle of Nashville, Tennessee?
Well, it was here in Nashville when I was attending American Baptist and later Fisk. The students here, the students, the teachers, the college administrator, they were so helpful. I was a very poor student, very, very poor, had very little money. So the first 2 years at American Baptist, I worked in the kitchen to help pay my way through school. And I was only 17 years old. I only weighed then maybe 130 pounds. But I have to wash these big pots and pans, and they were full of water. But I did it to get through school. And the second 2 years, I worked in the administration building as a janitor. And I shouldn't say it in front of the president working as a janitor during the sit-in, I came across a ring of paper, typing paper, a ring of 500 sheets, and we needed some paper to type the do's, to print the do's and don'ts of the sit-in movement, and I liberated this ring of paper. And got one of the staffers of the school to type the do's and don'ts. So when 89 students were arrested on February 27, 1960, every single one had a copy of the do's and don'ts of the sit-in movement. And the Nashville, Tennessee reprinted them.
Thank you.
But it was wonderful to get to know people, students, faculty members. They became my family.
Thank you. Tasia, do you have a question?
Hello, everyone. I just want to say thank you also. It's an honor to ask you these questions. And my first question is, how did it feel to be the youngest person to speak at March on Washington? Were you nervous, and what memories do you have at the moment?
Well, I must tell you, my speech was a pretty hard-hitting speech. And there were some people wanted to change some of the words, wanted me to delete some of the phrases. And I remember one line in the speech said, "You tell us to wait. You tell us to be patient. We cannot wait. We cannot be patient. We want our freedom, and we want it now." Something to that effect. A. Philip Randolph was the dean of the movement, and he, along with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., said there was one or two other lines, and it said something like, "John, that doesn't sound like you. Can you change that? We come this far together. Why don't we stay together?" I couldn't say no to A. Philip Randolph or to Martin Luther King Jr., so I kept it in the speech. So I was not nervous. I was not afraid. I remember Mr. Randolph introducing me. He said, "I now present to you young John Lewis, the national chairman of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee." I got up, I went straight to the podium. I looked to my right, I saw all of these young people from the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, blacks and white young people, students. Then I looked straight ahead. Then I looked to my left, and I saw young men, white and African American, in the trees trying to get a better view of the crowd. And I said to myself, this is it. I just went for it. So it came out all right.
Thank you. Asian, go for it.
Good morning, and thank you, Congressman Lewis, for coming and speaking to us today.
Good morning. Happy to be here.
My question is, do you feel as though social media has helped or harmed social movements today?
Oh, I think social media has been so helpful. Look, if we'd had social media during the 60s, I don't know what we would have been able to do, really. You know, we hadn't heard of the internet. What is that? Facebook? Twitter? What? In many places, we didn't have a fax machine. We had our own mimeograph machine. Cell telephone? And when I was growing up, we didn't get a telephone in our home until much later. And we had party line. You had to wait till the other person got off the line. So social media had made a major contribution to the development of movements, not just in America, but around the world.
Thank you. Braden, can you give your question, please?
Thank you for coming and sharing your time with us today. My question is, if you could go back and change one political decision you've made, what would that be and why?
Well, I'm not so sure of any political decision that I would want to make a change. I sometimes feel like I should have spent more time talking with Dr. King and learning from him when I had an opportunity. I thought he'd be around a long time. He had tremendous influence on me. I met with President Kennedy when I was 23, the first time, in June of 1963. And a group of us met with him on August 28, 1963. It was my last time seeing him. But there were people that I saw and met and I learned from, like Robert Kennedy and Nelson Mandela, going off to Rome and to meet with the Pope. But we learned so much, and we should take advantage of people who have influenced people and influenced history. And I should have spent more time learning, and probably more time learning from my teachers and professors. So I would say to you, stay in school and learn as much as possible and take it all in.
Thank you. And we have time for one more question. Kayla, would you please close us out?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. I really enjoyed it. You have faced adversity for a majority of your life. Concerning times today, what advice do you have for students and young people when they face adversity?
You know, adversity tends to make us stronger, make us wiser. Just continue to live a life of service. Try to help others in spite of it all. I don't regret being arrested in jail 45 times, or being beaten. No one wanted to be hurt. No one wanted to be left bloody or unconscious. But sometimes it's a price we have to pay to change our society, to help move people to another level. Just do what you can. If you're going to be a teacher, be a great teacher. A lawyer, be a good lawyer. Be a good and smart doctor. You know, when I see police officers, they're wearing uniform, I always say to them, thank you for your service. When I pass through the airport and see the TSA people, I say, thank you for your service. When I see military people with their uniform on, you reckon? But I think there are a lot of teachers, they don't go around with uniforms. And it's hard to say, thank you. And You should be able to say to your teachers, thank you for teaching. I visit a lot of schools all over America, in my district and around the country. And I don't understand how teachers teach. But sometimes I feel like saying that we should nominate every public school teacher and some of the private school teachers for the Nobel Peace Prize. For maintaining order and discipline. And the great majority of our teachers, I think, are underpaid. Really. We can do better. We can do much better. And just encourage people, encourage your parents and others to support efforts to see that our teachers and others get the due compensation that they should be receiving. I know I'm getting in trouble, but it's good trouble.
I want to take this time to thank the teacher of this hour now, Congressman John Robert Lewis.
It is great to be here, and I just cannot tell you how much sitting here and listening to Congressman Lewis and his story, and just how much you have done that has shaped our city, our nation, and the world that we live in. And Congressman, it is clear to me that here in this town, you are beloved. If you have not yet read Congressman Lewis' graphic novel, March, I hope you go out and get it, because it talks about the power of nonviolent protests that have changed our society. And its message of love and inclusion being more powerful than hate and division is a really important time for us in our nation right now. Nashville has changed a lot since Congressman Lewis and his fellow students marched through our streets. Our Metro Police trainees now are required to go to a class at the Civil Rights Room and to learn from you and what you've done. In fact, last year, our police chief, Steve Anderson, asked for Congressman Lewis's file from the 1960s. He wanted to research the congressman's role in the civil rights movement and how the police interacted with him. He's sorry he couldn't be here today, but he regularly talks to our future police officers about your courage and your leadership. That request for that file led to a very lengthy search that eventually produced records that, as far as I know, have never been published before. And Congressman, I'm not sure you've seen these in a long time. So we have something we would like to share with you. Can you bring this out? For those of you who can't see this, these are his mugshots and arrest records from 1961, 1962, 1963. You were busy. You were arrested while you were protesting injustice. You were on the right side of history when the power structure of our community was not. So let's make sure that all of us are on the right side of history when this time that is written about now is reflected upon. Because, Congressman, you got into some good trouble in Nashville, and apparently 40 plus more times. And I hope that these photos remind you of what you have done and the legacy that you have left for us. These will be in the Civil Rights Room at the Downtown Library for all of us to see. So please make sure you have a chance to do that. And as we begin our book march, and our great community read, I know that all of us will have a chance to be as inspired with that book as we've been inspired today listening to you. I thank you for your message of peace. I thank you for your message of love. And mostly, I thank you for your message of kindness, because it doesn't cost a dime to be kind. Thank you.